So we were materialistic, non-spiritual, loving family.
I went to Vassar and I was Phi Beta Kappa, lots of awards, and when that was over, I didn't know how to keep excelling, so I moved to New York City.
I was stationed in the military in the U.S. Air Force at the time.
I said to my father that I was feeling funny and I wanted to sit down.
So we went to this nightclub and we did a whole lot of cocaine.
I came out the library, had a short sleeve shirt on, of course, and then I felt the sun prickling my skin. You know, I'm brown. It's kind of odd for me to get sunburned.
And then I fell into and threw his arms onto the sidewalk. So they slapped this airtight device to my face, turned it on, and it was on vacuum mode. So it violently sucked out whatever oxygen was left in my body. And already I hadn't been breathing for a few minutes.
We decided to buy some more. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was lidocaine, not cocaine. What lidocaine does is it shuts down a lot of your automatic nervous system.
All of a sudden, everything started spinning and round and round and round, and the more it spun, the more nauseated I got. The more I went to these cold sweats, the more intense the headache, everything started caving in. It got to the point where I could not fight it anymore.
The first thing I remember is a woman's voice to my left saying, "I'm not getting a pulse, I'm not getting a pulse." And with the same sense of reality with which I'm now speaking, I turned to her and said, "Of course you're getting a pulse, otherwise I wouldn't be talking."
It seemed that I flew up in the air, straight up in the air, and it felt wonderful.
A light exploded under me, a light brighter than a million suns. So this is beyond my vocabulary, especially in describing this light, because it sounds so, oh, the light, yeah.
I was sailing over that dappling path that the sun puts across the ocean, and it felt so delicious. Like, even though I didn't really have a body, I could feel this motion, this swooping, this right over the ocean. The sun got bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden I realized, holy crap, I'm going to go into the sun. And then, I'm in the sun.
You know what? This light was love. We can call it that. We can say Bubba. Doesn't matter to God.
And it came from this being that was like a parent, it seemed. That seemed to be holding me, cradling me, and loving me like I was an infant or baby, and just pouring, "You are so loved, you are so loved." And it felt so good, and I loved the parent so much. But what happened, I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything. It was just intense, brilliant light, warmth, and love, until I just sort of wasn't even thinking, "You love me, I love you." It was just, love is.
If I was a Christian, I would call the light Jesus. If I was a Buddhist, I would call the light Buddha. If I was a Hindu, it would be Krishna. The light becomes what we believe, what we associate with. And that's immaterial. It doesn't make any difference what we call the light, because it's love.
A window-like aperture opened to my right. Then I was told that if I went through that window, that was it. That was my border. There'd be no coming back. I was out of there like a shot. And I was almost through the window when God, clever God, said, "Wait, just a minute before you do that, check this out." I'm paraphrasing God, of course. And then came up like a gallery of large portraits with captions. And one was best friend, one was co-worker, one was next door neighbor, one was friend. It went on like that. They were complete strangers. But I was told that these were people that were going to be in my life if I chose to live.
I saw myself at 5 years old. So it was my brothers and sisters and my neighborhood friend, his name was Hottie. Listen to me, I don't know why. He picked up the stick and whacked the beehive, and we all took off and ran. And everyone got into the apartment buildings, and the last one to get in, to approach the door, was Hottie. And I had a devious thought in my mind. I said, I'm going to hold the door and not let Hottie in to see what happens to Hottie. And all those bees from that beehive, they stung the daylights out of Hottie. And every single bee sting I felt every sting, the burning sensations, the swelling. His mother came out the apartment building, scared, frightened. I felt all of her fear, all of her fright, all of her rage. His father came out there trying to figure out what I felt it all. It rippled. I felt every single thing. I was negative. I was not perfect. I was not perfect enough to stay in this heavenly plane. And as my ego and it acquired that realization, they both, in that realm, acquired gravity, and I descended and descended and descended back into the earth and vibrated back into the body.
I told my roommate the whole story, but I was a really intense atheist. I was an adamant atheist. Anybody who's believed in God, talked about God, it just pissed me off. So I told the story, but I used that compartment of mine that I had developed when I was young. And I put the truth that was God or something. I knew it was God or something with that powerful love. Stuck that in the vault and sort of told the story to my friend, like, get this crazy drug trip I had. Okay, so it seems like I'm going into the sun. I told the whole thing like that. And when I got to the parent part, I remember she kind of looked at me and she's like, so that was kind of like God. And I was like, yeah, it was kind of like God and stuff.
Now I've got my licensed clinical social worker, MSW. And then once I was in the emergency room of the hospital, and there's a woman looking miserable, sitting on a gurney in what's called 2-point restraint, so her wrists were tied down to the sides. And I made an idle question to the resident, what's up with her? He said, she feels like she's been going in and out of her body. We're taking her up to inpatient psych. And I was like, I'm never telling. No way.
I made an appointment with the chaplain, as we call him in the military. When he finally got off the phone, and I said, sir, I think I had some kind of spiritual experience. He said, what? And I began to open up a little bit. I think I had an experience with God. He said, well, there's a place right across the street for you. Why don't you go talk to them? And across the street was mental health. I said, my God, thank you, sir. And I left.
I had this story. It was locked away in a vault. And I would have left it there. I would have left it there as just this weird thing that happened to me that had no meaning, because I'd never heard of a near-death experience. I'd never heard of white light. Except that paranormal after effects started to happen to me. The greatest one was around my sister's death. She was dying of breast cancer. They had told us she had 2 weeks to live. I was waiting in their hospital room, and a voice said to me, tell her about the light, she's afraid. And I was like, no, what? She's lived 2 weeks, what is this? And when I'd close my eyes, I could feel the light starting to fill the room. I could feel the light starting to pool around her body. And I'd open my eyes and look, and these eyes didn't see anything, and I'd be like, there's nothing there, and she's going to live 2 weeks, and it just kept building until finally I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so I went to her, and I knelt down by her, and I described the light as I remembered it. And I said, it'll be all around you. She believed in Jesus, so I said, Jesus will be with you. You'll go with him. You'll be enfolded in his love, and you'll know so much happiness. And when I was done, I went and I sat down, and then 20 minutes later, she hemorrhaged and she died. And then something came from outside, and it was my sister. And she was saying, I'm fine. I'm great. And then I began to feel her hovering in the hospital room, loving us all with that same kind of love. And she filled me with it. She filled me with the light again.
Still, I am in the field of death and dying, happily so. Until I take my own last breath, I hope I'm breathing on behalf of others, bringing them that same love and hope, mercy, kindness, and happiness. I feel like my purpose has been served.
What the world can gain from near-death experiencers is to sort of extract from religion and maybe even marry with science, because it's got to do with energy, properties of energy we don't know about. What's most important in life, which is love. Such a cliche. You know, you pass someone on the sidewalk and you say something nice and they smile back and there's a little, it's God right there.
But the essence of what I'm saying is we've got to conquer the fear of dying. And people who've had these near-death experiences, we are duty-bound to share the people. We don't die. We only move on. We only move on. I wish I could find words. It's a beautiful, 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 beautiful event. It's better than being born.